Well, I am super thrilled to be here. I hope this is super encouraging. I came with my son, Caleb, and so we're going to be here for the next couple days in different spots. Super excited to be here. The last time I was here was years ago. And I know it was at the Samoset, and I came with my son, who is now married, lives across the street from me now. But we have 8 children. We've been doing this for about 20 years. We've traveled around the country. Encouraging homeschoolers and families and moms and dads because we believe in home education. We believe in it. I mean, I was talking to a mom in St. Louis, I think it was last year, and she was saying, we were just having pizza getting ready for an event like this, and she said, I made a lot of mistakes in my parenting. Her kids were like 30. She said lots of things that I would do over, wish I could do over. And then she said, but choosing to home educate my children was not one of them, was not one of those mistakes. And so I don't know how you got to this place, whether you are shoved into this, through COVID, or whether you came to this point. But I just want to encourage you in this because I know it can be discouraging, especially when you haven't had interaction with people and I can tell because it evidences itself in the fact that we've quit smiling. Because that's what I really want for you. Because when you started this thing a long time ago, you thought it was going to be fun, didn't you? You just imagined yourself smiling as you were educating your children, and it was just going to be this great, great thing. And I know that for my family, we thought that. Before I get there, though, I just want to tell you a little bit about my family. I have 8 children, and like I said, for a long, long, long time, we've been traveling the country in a big RV that we call the Family Man Mobile. This is a little far for us and a little cold for us, so we didn't bring it here. But sometimes we would be out on the road for up to 100 days in a row with 10 people in our RV, and just to give you an idea of what that would feel like, it would be like later on if you would gather your family in a small room, maybe like your kitchen or maybe in a bathroom, and then stay there until the 4th of July. It's a lot of fun. My kids have seen everything. They've been everywhere. And they're going to have lots of great memories once they get out of counseling someday, because you can get a little twitchy when you're that close and tight for so long. But now we're trying to figure it out because things have kind of changed. I've got 4 children who are married, and we've got 5 grandchildren. We've got my oldest, he lives right next door, and they have 3 children, and it's so amazing. I mean, it's just so amazing. Another thing that I ever planned for or, thought this is the way it would turn out. But there's nothing better than to hear this little girl across the way say, "Hi, Pops." It is so awesome. And then my son, he got married, and actually he married my daughter-in-law's sister. Then they live across the street, so I don't know. I think that now makes him my cousin or my nephew. I'm not sure, but it's kind of confusing. And they had a house that was totally abandoned, had a dirt floor in it, and they've made it into this amazing home now, and they're still working on it because they'll always be working on it. And then I have another son who just celebrated his 3rd anniversary with their first child. And yesterday, that is my mother, I'm sure. They're going to maybe have a little few technical glitches along the way, but we're good with that. And then so my daughter, she just had their first baby. She was 5 weeks premature, and that was kind of it. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just unexpected thing. And she came out, so young. Her stomach was kind of extended because she had a lot of gas, and they were ultrasounding, and they said, everything looks, I think, good. And then this past week, she had 2 major blowouts, and life was good, So they're like, yes, it's amazing how a blowout can bring such joy. But we were all thrilled, and so again, we just feel overwhelmed by God's goodness in all this. Okay, so as we we begin this whole 3-day conference together with this workshop. And this is one of my favorite because this is like the best place to stay or start. Because this is the reason why we homeschool. This we believe. And back in the day, when homeschooling first started, everybody knew why they homeschooled. It was super clear. I mean, when this is your 32nd year, did they say? 32nd year for this. When they first started, there were no these. So 33 years ago, there was no this. They didn't have any online resources. There was no online, of course. There was no anyone to guide you through homeschooling. In fact, it was barely legal or barely known. But they knew why they were doing it. Some of them didn't go to jail necessarily, but they were threatened with going to jail. And they were willing to go to jail because they knew why they homeschooled. That's my mom again. Why that's not me, is it? I mean, it is me. Okay, if you have mute your microphones. Okay, I'm gonna just plow through here from this point on. And so, they didn't know how-tos, they had why-tos. Now we have lots of how-tos. We have lots of online resources. We have lots of groups and meetings. And even though this might seem fresh for you, there are meetings taking place all over the country right now. But I'm afraid we've forgotten the why-tos. And that's why I'm here to remind you of. Because, where we homeschool in our state of Indiana, there aren't a lot of regulations. I don't know what are the regulations heavy here? And not too bad. But in Indiana, you don't have to hardly do anything. And so as our kids got a little bit older, as we're kind of plugging through homeschooling, I'm like, well, they keep talking about transcripts. We got to do transcripts. And I didn't know what a transcript looked like. I mean, when I was in school, I didn't understand any of that. It was never on my radar. And so I didn't know that we had to keep track of all these things. And in Indiana, we didn't have to. So I Googled it. And I said, what does a high school transcript look, homeschool high school transcript? And so I got one. I pulled one off the internet. And it's pretty cut and dry. It's got student information, it's got the school information, and then it's got school year. And it says this. This is for grade level 9. So course title, credit earned, final grade. So English 9, credit earned 1, final grade A. Algebra 1, credit earned 1, final grade A. Biology with a lab, credit earned 1, final grade B. Geography, credit earned 1, final grade C. Logic, credit earned 1, final grade B. And it goes on. 4 years, 1 sheet of paper, one-sided. And when I got to the end, I wrote on my paper, yuck. I'm like, is that it? Is that what it's all about? We have 12 years of this stuff, and it all boils down to this course, final grade this, credit earned this. And I thought, no, it used to be a lot more than that, and we've forgotten that. And again, I think the evidence is that we've just stopped smiling at all this. So I'm going to remind you of why we homeschool. And there's only 4 points. And you're not going to even need to write them down, even though I know some of you mothers have already got, a quarter page of notes. I haven't even said a single thing yet. But I know. But you're not going to need to write them down because you're going to remember these things forever and ever. And here's the very first one. We believe that home is the best place for our kids. That's it. We believe the home is the best place for our kids. There was never a question about that in the past. In fact, that's the way it always was. From the beginning of creation, God just put these little units together all over the place, and they were these families, right? In a home. And not only was home the training ground, but it also became the battlefield. So everything you learned, you used in a home. But somewhere along the way, people started saying, no, that's not really true. Back in the early days, if you would have asked them, Well, how often does real learning take place in this home? And everybody would have said, how many days out of the year? 365 days out of the year, every single day. I mean, of course, that makes total sense. But somewhere along the way, people started saying, no, that's not true. Home's an okay place for some things. It's an okay place to go to bed. It's an okay place to have a birthday party. But it's not a good place to be educated. And of course, the Greek word for that is baloney. Because that's not only not true, it is majorly not true. In fact, I saw this on the old TV series, Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if you've seen it. Well, you're homeschoolers. You have seen it. I know that. In fact, in the winter, we used to go to the library and get the whole stack of DVDs, and we'd watch them. And my older kids would go, I'm not going to watch that. But they'd always get sucked in, because they couldn't help it. And so we'd watch those. And I noticed that there was this one scene that seemed to take place over and over again. Not every show, but like maybe every other show. And it was a scene that it revolved around this building right in the center of town, and there was always this sound, this bell ringing, this da-ding, 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 and all the kids would come running to this one building because now that's where the real learning took place. And now, if you would have asked them, well, how often does real learning take place? They would no longer say 365 days out of the year. Now they would say, how often? 175 or 180 days out of the year. The school season, that's how long it takes. And that's just not true. In fact, I can remember being at a homeschool convention like this. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was standing in line waiting for some food, and this guy asked me, so when do you homeschool? Because, again, we travel around in an RV, and I said, well, we homeschool 365 days out of the year. And he looked at me and he kind of snickered, and he's like, yeah, I know that answer, wink, wink. But when do you do the important stuff, wink, wink? And I'm thinking, why are you winking at me, And I said, what do you mean? He goes, when do you do the important stuff? And I said, like what? And he goes, you mean like science and history and all those things? And I said, oh, those things. I said, we do them just like you, but those aren't the important things. We've kind of been duped into thinking they are. And some of you moms, maybe you're just starting your homeschool journey, and you're feeling all this pressure. Those are not the important things. And in fact, I've been doing this for about 20 years almost. Before that, I was a pastor for about 10 years, and I've never had an adult come up to me with tears streaming down their face, with their heart broken, and say to me, I'm just so miserable because I don't know the Pythagorean theorem or the periodic table. Where's iron and why is it Fe? Nobody ever does that. Why is that? Because those aren't the things that matter. Now, when I say they don't matter, I don't mean they don't matter. They just don't matter, And even if you use them to make your living, those are not the things that break your heart or bring you great joy. The things that break your heart and bring you joy are the things that happen in your home 365 days out of the year, right? Yes. So we believe that home is the best place for our kids. In fact, there are lessons that are so, so important that they learn in your home. Like how to trust God. Is that an important lesson? That's a huge lesson. You think it's weird here now? What's it going to be like when your kids are grown up? Do you think the headlines take your breath away? I can't even imagine what it will be like in 10 or 15 years. You think we have wars and rumors of wars and economic upheaval. It will be worse then. And your kids better learn to trust in God. And guess how they're going to learn that? From you. And so we put the Bible as a priority in our home. I don't expect my kids to interact with it on some super spiritual level. I just want them to read their Bibles. Really? I just don't have high expectations. I know some of your moms are like, yeah, but my kids, they don't seem very spiritual. Well, mine don't either, and sometimes I don't either. But I know that God promised that if they would read it, that would not turn out void. And so we put a priority. But that's not the most important way to get them to trust God. You know what the most important way is? By doing it yourself, which they just so happen to be watching all the time. And in fact, we have at our house, we'll have family devotions. Now, we don't have them every day. I wish I was one of those dads who just started the day he had a kid and he didn't finish until he's dead, but I am not that dad. So we'll skip a week or sometimes a couple years. And, but we will jump right back into it, because it's not easy for me. It's just not. Maybe because it's never what I anticipate. I always picture kind of my kids worshiping with their, and really it's just us arguing the whole time and me yelling at them. But we'll start out with a song because, I heard you're supposed to have a song. And we sing the old songs like, this is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. And again, I don't expect it to sound worshipful. I would just like my kids to sing. I'm just like, I'm not going to sing this by myself. Come on, everybody sing, and so I'm yelling at them. But I want them to learn something. I want them to hear something come out of their mouth, a spiritual truth, to put it and plant it in their head. So when we sing, this is the day the Lord has made, what am I trying to teach my kids? I'm asking you. And yeah, I saw somebody up there on the screen move their lips. I cannot hear you, so that's okay. You're good. But keep doing it anyway. So I'm asking you, what do I want my kids to learn? This is the day the Lord has made it. This is not hard. Well, that is kind of repeating the question, but that's okay. You're right. That no matter what, we're going to rejoice. Whether it's sunny or snowy or gray or good or, we're full, we're empty. It doesn't matter. We're going to rejoice. Then we'll sing, He's got the whole world in His hands. And what am I trying to teach my kids? I know He's got the whole world in His hands. I know that. But what am I trying to teach them? God's in control. Is that true? Are you sure? Are you positive? It sounds real easy to say that in this room right now, doesn't it? But sometimes when I'm behind the wheel of my big RV and we're driving down the road, life gets a little foggy for me. In fact, I remember one time we were driving to Duluth, Minnesota, and I was driving along and we were going through Janesville, Wisconsin, and I'm looking down at my gauges, and I'm always watching my gauges. And I see that my voltmeter that tells me how much voltage is coming out of my alternator is starting to drop. It's supposed to be between 12 and 14, and all of a sudden it's 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. And I'm like, something should be happening. And I'm driving along, and I call up my dad. My dad can fix anything. And I'm like, Dad, how long can my RV run without an alternator? And before he could say a single word, the whole thing just went, and I'm like, never mind, Dad, and I hung up. And I found out if I drove really slow, it would run. And so I see this Swiss Chalet restaurant up there, and I'm all the way up to the thing, and I get up there, and they go, oh, we can't work on it, but if you go back the same way you came, about 3 miles, and so we limped down that way, and they couldn't work on it either, but there was this big parking lot. And I'm just kind of pacing back and forth. I'm trying to stay in the camera here. I'm just pacing back and forth like a caged lion, thinking, how long is this going to take? If we miss this event, are we going to make it to the next event? What if it costs this much? I mean, we're just going to this event, or will we make that much? And all these things. My kids are yelling things out the window like, hey, Dad, did you try starting it? Yeah, and my wife is like, honey, did you change the oil before we left? Okay, ladies, this is the nugget of your whole conference. If you find yourself in a similar situation, just don't say anything. Finally, my son Ike, who is my nephew, lives across the street, he says to me, he sticks his head out of the window, and he's got this white hair, and he's like, Dad, and I'm like, what? He said, maybe we should sing. And I'm like, sing? Why would we sing right now? And he goes, he's got the whole world in his hands. Ding, 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 ding. At that moment, school was in session. And what was I teaching my children? I'm asking. I was teaching them, he said trust, I'm just repeating that. Really, I was teaching them the opposite, that God is not in control. We can say what we want. We can have them do the little picture books, and we can have them read the verses, and we can have them memorize the verses as well. But if we're not living it, they're not going to learn it. Now, fortunately, God got a hold of my heart, and I'm like, oh, you're right, Ike. And we went inside, and we prayed, and we sang He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. I don't know what's going on in your life right now, but I know God can be trusted. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who makes the laws. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're going to lose your house or God's still in control. But if you're freaking out, and go, I don't know what we're going to do. If this guy keeps doing what he's doing, we're in trouble. Or if this guy pushes a button, what are we teaching our children? Something huge. And so maybe we gather our kids, for a real important lesson. And we say, I'm so sorry for making you believe that God's not in control, but He is. And then you sing He's got the whole world in His hands. Is that a huge lesson? That's a huge lesson. That's way more important than algebra. It is. And so we believe that home is the best place for our kids. I would cling to that. In fact, you might be a single mom. And I know if you're a single mom, everybody around you is telling you why you shouldn't homeschool your kids. They're all pushing you back. Like, oh, you need time for yourself. Just put the kids back in school. Then you can have time. Don't. If you believe, you should homeschool your kids, then cling to that. That home is the best place for my kids. If you have a child who has special needs and takes a lot of your attention, and you think, I can't meet all the other needs of everybody else because of this child, and other people are going, well, just put your other kids. If you believe you should homeschool your kids, don't put them back. You cling to the fact that home's the best place for your kids. In fact, I believe that your children have a head start just because they're at home learning. Even if you did nothing, they have a head start. Because the most important lessons are taught at your house 365 days out of the year. Okay, that's the first one. So we believe that home's the best place for our kids. Number 2, we believe parents are the best teachers of their children. I was careful in the way I said that. I said, we believe that parents are the best teachers of their children. I didn't say the best teachers in the whole world. If you want to find someone smarter to teach your kids, they're a dime a dozen. Put a sign in your yard, wanted smart person, and you can probably find someone. But if you want to find someone better to teach your children, there's no one than you. In fact, we always believed that in the past. We had, people who, or God took these imperfect parents, gave them very imperfect kids, and He said, okay, teach them everything they need to know. You teach them all about me, all about life, all about how they work, all that. And that's what we did. But somewhere along the way, people started saying, no, parents are okay for some things. They're okay for tucking their kids into bed at night. They're okay for bandaging boo-boos, but they're not qualified to teach their children. In fact, I don't know if it was then, but again, at that time of the schoolroom. In fact, I saw it on an old Andy Griffith show, and I don't get all my wisdom from old television shows. I use the Bible and old television shows. But my kids we were watching the Andy Griffith show, and they're fans too. And we're watching this episode, and and Opie comes home from school, and he's got a paper that's all marked up in red. And he gives it to his dad, Sheriff Taylor, who's, Andy Griffith, and his dad says, "What's this, Ope?" And he says, "Oh, Pa, this is all these dates in history. I don't understand them, and they just don't stick with me." And his dad says, "Oh, Ope, those don't really matter in real life." Well, the next day, he is in class with his teacher, Miss Crump, who is like his perpetual teacher. And he says, "My pa said these dates don't really matter." And Miss Crump is mad. And she comes down to the sheriff's station. She didn't kick open the door, but she opens it forcibly. And she says, "Sheriff Taylor, I'll leave the sheriffing to you, and you leave the education of your children to me." And I thought, she said it. That's what they believe in the world. That you're okay for having kids. You're not qualified to teach your children. Of course, in 2020, that all changed when the whole world said, yeah, you can teach them. We should never learn that lesson. Now they're going back and say, we were wrong. No, we needed it. It's not true. They knew that you were qualified. Not only you were qualified, but you know what's best. You know what's best for your kids. I mean, you think about your kids all the time, don't you? All the time. Your husbands don't, but you do. And in fact, I wake up. I mean, this is like how I wake up most mornings. I wake up and my wife's laying next to me, and her head, I can hear the gears turning. She's just thinking. And I'll even say to her, I said, what are you thinking about? She'll say, oh, I just feel like I'm not doing a very good job in school for the little kids. I'm kind of missing the middle kids. I don't even know. My older kids, I haven't even connected with them lately. I'm not being a very good grandmother. I'm not a very good sister. I'm not a very good wife. I'm not meeting your needs. And my mom, I'm not a very good sister or a daughter, and all these things. She goes on and on and on. And I'm like, that's a lot of stuff. And she's like, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, nothing. Yeah. Is there any milk in the refrigerator for breakfast? I don't know. But you're thinking about that your children all the time. In fact, you know what's best for your kids. And I believe this truth, that God gave your children exactly the mother they needed. Isn't that an amazing truth? That God gave your children exactly the mother they needed. And I've said it lots of times, but every time I say it, I still get a chill because it's true. But here's the deal. I know that all you moms watching this online and all the moms sitting in here don't believe it. In fact, you think, well, Todd, that's true for everybody else, but you don't know me. In fact, we skip more days than we should. I barely know my math facts. We just don't get around to a lot. We get up late and we don't get started. We skip days. And how can that be good for my children? I know this, that you with those qualities are perfect for your children. Perfect for your children. And yet other moms are saying, yeah, Todd, but they're the fun moms. I'm the mom who takes all fun out of life. If I don't have my kids in tears by 9:30, I don't think I've done my job well. How can that be good for my kids? I don't know. But, no, I'm kidding. I know my wife would say that was her camp. I know this, that you with those qualities are perfect for your children. Perfect for your children. In fact, you need to say to them from now on when they go, Mom, you just make it all so miserable. You need to say, and that's exactly the kind of mother God knew you needed. So when you go to bed tonight, you can thank Him. No more guilt. No more guilt. If He wanted you to be a perfect mom, He would have made you a perfect mom. That's the truth. So it must be better the way you are now. In fact, that means you're smart enough to figure out how to homeschool your kids. And it may not look like everybody's sitting next to you, And I believe that. I mean, if your best friend says to you, well, you've got to do unit studies because unit studies are the way we truly learn. And you go ahead and you check it out and you're like, wow, that looks really exhausting. I don't think I can turn my living room into a spleen, And you do it and you look at it and you're like, I can't do it. Don't do it. And don't feel guilty. And your best friend says, you got to do classical because everybody knows Jesus would have done classical, And if you look at it and it doesn't feel good to you, don't do it and don't feel guilty. You know what's best. Or if you have a topic, my wife said to me, she goes, I don't want to teach our kids about dinosaurs. And I'm like, well, don't teach them about dinosaurs. Well, she said, well, Ken Ham said that they'll walk away from the faith if they don't know anything about dinosaurs. And I'm like, you don't know anything about dinosaurs and you love God, you're good, So don't teach them about dinosaurs, or maybe it's something else. Sentence diagramming. There's really no reason to do that, so don't do that anyway. I remember one time I was with my wife and we were like at a convention where the creator of this curriculum was here and was there, and my wife said, hey, could you go with me and we'll talk to this guy about these things? And I said, sure. And so we go and my wife had this plan. She'd been thinking about it, in bed every morning. And she said, she said, told the guy, I'm thinking about doing this, and I'd like to do this with the curriculum. And he goes, no, I don't think that's the right idea. She said, well, I have been talking about, thinking about it with my kids, and this would work out really well. And he goes, no, I think you're wrong. And they went back and forth a couple times. After a while, I wanted to say, excuse me, sir, do you know who I am? I'm the parent. You don't even know my kids. You don't know anything about them. And you're telling my wife, who knows my kids better than anybody else, that she's not thinking right? Moms, you are the best teacher for your children. We believe that. Again, hold on to that. I know my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is an amazing homeschooler. She works harder than any homeschooling mom I know. She's Thursday, of course she's doing school now, but Saturday she's doing school. Sunday she's doing school. Summer vacation, she takes 45 minutes. That's it. And then they just jump right back into it. And I heard she was thinking about not homeschooling. And I said to her, you're thinking about not homeschooling next year? And she whirled on me and she stuck her finger in my face. And she's got kind of a crooked finger. So she stuck her crooked finger in my face. And she said, I feel like my kids would be better off if anyone were teaching them but me. Do you know why she said that? Because she had forgotten the truth. The truth that you moms are the best teachers for your children. Hands down. No buts about it. You cling to that. That's the second one. So we believe home's the best place for our children. We believe parents are the best teachers of their children. And number 3, we believe that every child is a masterpiece. I'm going to say that again. We believe that every one of your children is a masterpiece. Can I say that one more time? One of the moms online just went, yes. It was rhetorical. I'm going to say it anyway. We believe that even that child is a masterpiece. And you know what? We always believed that in the past. Never before. At the beginning of creation, that's the way it was. They just had kids come along and they said, oh, this kid's good with his hands. He's going to be a carpenter. Yeah, great. This kid's good with animals. He's a shepherd. This kid's good with numbers. He's a mathematician. This kid's good with musical instruments. He's a musician. This kid's good with whatever people. He's a restaurant owner. I don't know. Just whatever. It was never a question. But somewhere along the way, again, I think it was when we had the ding-ding, the bell started ringing. They started saying, no, we can't say that every child's a masterpiece. We have too many kids in our little classroom. What we need are some standards. And we need to measure the kids according to the standards. And if the kid is really, really good, we'll give them an A for excellence. If they're a little below that, we'll give them a B. Below that, we'll give them a C if they're average-ish. Below that, we'll give them a D. And, anything lower than that, we'll just call them failures. And that's a lot of fun, and we can, if you're way up here, and we continue that on into adulthood. We say, oh, you're a nuclear scientist brain surgeon, you're way at the top. You're a rock star chemist, you're a little bit lower, a doctor, a custodian, a muckraker, a lawyer, and it's a lot of fun if you're at the top, but it's not so much fun when you're down lower. In fact, I will never forget that this time I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and this guy came up to me, and he was a lumberjack, which is the coolest job you can have as a guy, and which probably most of your husbands and yourselves are probably lumberjacks here. And this guy came up to me, and he said, oh, Todd, you're so right, and he talked like a lumberjack, and he had the flannel shirt on, and he said, I never was very good in kindergarten. And he said it like that. And he said, in fact, when I was in kindergarten, I remember my teacher, she was handing back our papers, and mine was all marked up in red, and it had a big old F on the top. And then he said, and when she handed it to me, she got down in my face and she whispered, we're going to put this out in the hallway so everybody can see how dumb you are. And when I looked up at this lumberjack, I saw a big old tear just slide down his lumberjack face. And he said, that was pretty much my whole growing up. He goes, I never was very smart in school. He said, even now, he says, I'm just a big dumb lumberjack and I work with my dad, he said. And then he said at the end of every day, he would sit on a tree stump with his dad, and they would just talk. And now he's telling me stories of his dad, and he's crying. Just the tears are streaming down his face. And I thought, how tragic that any child would ever grow up thinking that. Do you know what's tragicer to me? Is that anybody would feel that way and they were homeschooled. Because we have believed that those grades mean something when they mean nothing. In fact, if you were going to give a letter grade to a masterpiece, what letter grade would you give them? An A? A plus? You know, does it not seem odd to you, because it seems odd to me, that we take a kid who comes into the world good at math, and do some of our kids come into the world good at math? Oh yeah. And then we give them an A for being good at math. And the kids who aren't good at math, who come into the world not good at math, we give them anything less than what they are. It does seem odd to me, because I'm not a math guy. I mean, I've taken as much math as you could have. I've had, not as much, I guess. I had calculus in high school. I had advanced calculus. Obviously, I wasn't good at it. Calculus in college, and I could not solve a simple algebra problem now. I could not solve a simple fraction problem now. I mean, I know you turn them upside down sometimes. I don't know what the rules are anymore. In fact, my son, he's like, hey, Dad, I need some help. Do you know where Mom is? And I'm like, I can help you. And he goes, I don't know, this is pretty hard. And I'm like, no, I can do it. And it was like, what is 9 times 7/53? And I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, there's no such thing as a 7/53. Just skip that problem, you know? I'm like, is this what we're teaching our kids, you know? Yeah, you know, and I'm just not good at it. In fact, I remember one time I was at a homeschool convention, and I was walking around a vendor hall, and whenever I walk around the vendor hall, usually I'm just looking for candy, you know? And I saw some good stuff in a jar or a bowl, and I said to the lady who was sitting at the table, I said, hey, can I have a piece of your candy? She said, well, if you let me do my curriculum with you. And I looked up, and it's a math like banner. And I'm like, oh. And I said, well, I'm not really very good at math. And she said, you will be when I'm done with you. And I'm like, well, I don't know. And she goes, stick out your hand. And I stick out my hand, and she drops some coins in my hand. She goes, I'm going to show you how to count back change. Now, I'm not dumb. I know how to count back change. No, I should say I know the concept. I can't do it. I mean, I just can't do it. In fact, if you buy something back at our table, make sure Cal, my son, helps you, because if I help you, you'll get ripped off or you'll get a good deal. So if you want to chance it, go ahead. But so I have my hand out, and she's putting these coins in it, and for 10 minutes, she's just quizzing me. After 10 minutes of babbling like an idiot, she finally goes, you can just have a piece of candy. I said, so I'm like a vendor hall dropout, you know? So, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. You know, and in fact, those letter grades, they're arbitrary anyway. I mean, I've heard public school or private school teachers say, well, I'll give my kid a B if he just tries. And I'm like, well, what kind of grading scale is that? The just try grading scale? Or when I was a senior at Purdue, my last semester of my last year, I decided I was going to get all A's. I got all A's and 1 B. It wasn't even like a B plus, it was just a B. And as I was, so I thought, I'm going to go to my professor, and I went to him, and I was telling him my plan. I wanted all A's, and you gave me a B, and I was about ready to say, well, could I do anything for extra credit? And he said, oh, you wanted all A's? I said, yeah. He said, well, I'll just change it. And I'm thinking, why didn't I do this sooner? I could have been the valedictorian of my class, you know, because even they know it doesn't matter. And I don't know about here in Maine. You know, if you don't have to keep grades, don't keep grades. If you do, do. But don't show them to your kids. And really, don't look at them yourselves. Because I've kind of figured out the grades really aren't about your kids anyway, are they? They're kind of about you and how well you did. But I am telling you, your kids are masterpieces. Masterpieces. Pieces made by the master. You know? And that changes things. Because I know you moms are so freaking out all the time. And I have moms come up to me and say, "Oh, Todd, you're so right. Our kids are masterpieces. I'm just praising God because my kid's in the 99th percentile." I'm still waiting for that mom to say, "I'm just praising God because my kid's in the 4th percentile." Because we should be praising God for those children, shouldn't we? Yes! And I'll have moms who come up to my table, and usually they wait till everybody's left and they're kind of hanging in the shadows, and then they finally get up the courage to come up to my table. And they'll say things like, "My child is 10 and they're still not reading." And I've been tempted to go, "You're kidding me. Someone should call the police, because that's, should all children be reading by 6? Mom's up on the screen, or nod your head up or down. Should all kids be reading by 6? No. Should all kids be reading by 7? No. 8? No. 9? I'm losing some of you now. You're not nodding anymore. No! How many of you done IEW, Institute for Excellence in Writing? Some of you have. There's 2 people. Andrew Pudewa, Mr. Reading and Writing himself. He had a 12-year-old who still wasn't really getting it. And that's okay. In fact, remember when God went to Moses, and he went to Moses and he said, "Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh, and I want you to tell him to let my people go." Do you remember what Pharaoh said? Or no, not Pharaoh. Do you remember what how he responded? He said, "But I can't speak. My tongue is thick. I can't do it." Do you know what God didn't say to Moses? He didn't go, "Well, Moses, with my curriculum, you can talk, You just need to use your other side of your brain." He didn't say that. What did he say? "Moses, I made the deaf. I made the mute. I made those who are good in math." No, he didn't say that part. "And I made those who aren't, those who can spell, those who can't, those who are sloppy, those who are neat, those who are fast, those who are a little slower." Really, and your job, parents, is to love your child even if they never get it. But I believe it's like this. If I were to reach in my pocket and pull out a seed, and I'd put it in the ground, and I'd sprinkle some magic water on it, and it popped up, what kind of plant would it be? Whatever seed I planted, right? So if I put in a sunflower, it pops a sunflower, marigold, a marigold. Never in the history of the world has a farmer put in a piece of corn and up popped a rutabaga. It just doesn't work that way. It is the same way with your children. They're going to become exactly what God created them to be. Not even because of you sometimes, but even in spite of you. I hear moms say all the time, "Oh yeah, my daughter, she's a biologist and we didn't even cover biology, Or my son's a computer scientist and we didn't have computers." In fact, I heard on the radio this guy, he was the head of the Genome Project. He led the team that mapped the human DNA. And it was on secular radio. He was giving he has a name, but I don't know what it is. And he was giving his little testimony, and because he was a Christian, and it was really amazing. He wrote a book, I think it was called The Breath of God, and it was great. 6 months later, I hear this guy on the same type of radio, secular radio, telling his testimony, so I wasn't really listening. But then the interviewer said, "Now, you were homeschooled, weren't you?" And now my ears perk up. And he goes, "Yeah, I was homeschooled." And she said, "Well, what did your homeschool look like?" And I thought, oh, great. He's going to say how he was raised by nuclear physicists and how they did brain drills from 3 months on. But he didn't say that. He said, it was back in the 60s and 70s. He said my parents were hippies. And he said they moved out to the middle of nowhere, which probably isn't far from where we are right now. And he said they were big into the theater. And he said we did a lot of plays and we read a lot. And and he said that was it. How does a guy go from Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo, to mapping the human DNA? And the answer really is very simple. It's the seed. It's what he was created to do. I see it with my own children. You know, my daughter Catherine, who's had the little preemie baby, when she was like 5 or 6, she showed signs of wanting to read. So my wife got that book, How to Teach Your Children to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And Catherine got it like lesson 6. It just made perfect sense. The son right behind her struggled, and he didn't get it. If there had been a book called How to Teach Your Children to Read in 10,000 Really Hard Lessons, he still might not have gotten it. You know, it was hard. And we would go through the, you know, the flashcards or on the book, and we'd say, okay, what's the word? Ka-at. And he'd look at it and go, fish. And we're like, fish? No. What's the first letter? Ka. What's the second letter? Ah. What's the third letter? T. What's the word? And he'd go, fish, you know. What's the deal? Was Catherine a great reader because my wife was an amazing teacher? No. Was it because the curriculum was so incredible? No. Did my son right behind her struggle because now my wife couldn't remember how to teach? No. Was it because the curriculum stunk? No. We tried other curriculum, same fish results. What was the difference? The child, the seed. You know, that is the way with your children. You know, your kid is going to be exactly what God created them to be. You know, and your job is to enjoy them along the way. Because my fear is that some of you moms are just banging your heads on the wall every day. Like, why can't you get this? This is not that hard. 7 times 9, and you throw up the card and they go, fish, you know. But that's not the big deal. Here's the big deal to me. Now, I don't think your kids would verbalize this, but I wonder sometimes if they feel this. Mom would like me better if I could just read. Now, I know the truth. You love your kids. But can you understand how they might feel that way? You know, because sometimes we forget. Because what do? We open our curriculum at the beginning of the day, and we just plow through. You know, we have carnage everywhere. You know, we get to the end, and we go, oh, we made it to the end. Good job. You know, you did make it to the end. But you missed out the most important stuff. And that leads me to the last one. So we believe the home's the best place for our kids. We believe that parents are the best teachers of their children. We believe that every child is a masterpiece. And lastly, we believe the relationship matters more than anything else. The relationship matters more than anything else. You know, and I know you get frustrated. I know, I get it. I remember because we operate a family ministry, so sometimes I'll do the homeschooling. Not very often, rarely. And my wife will just say, I need to do the books today. Could you do school? And I'm like, sure, I can do it. I'm not very good at it, but I'm really fast. So I feel like I should get points for that. And I remember one time I was working with one of my children, and we had not worked for 15 minutes. Not an hour and 15 minutes, but 15 minutes, when out of my mouth came this, what, are you dumb? Now, God got a hold of my heart, just like that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't mean that. No, you're an amazing person. You're incredible, you know. But I'm just frustrated because we've been working on this like forever. But you know what my child heard come out of my mouth? What, are you dumb? Do you know why I said that? Because I forgot. I thought what mattered was a curriculum I was doing with my child. What mattered, what always matters, is my child, who I just happened to be doing some curriculum with. We forget that. You know, and I'll tell you, I've talked to moms who've lost children. I talked to a homeschooling mom who stopped homeschooling her 13-year-old daughter when she died of a brain tumor. Do you know what she did not talk about with me? She never mentioned the math program she used. She never mentioned how she missed, you know, doing whatever, phonics, or I guess you don't do phonics at 13, but, you know, or whatever. Any of the curriculum, she didn't mention it. All she talked about is how she missed sitting on a couch talking with her daughter and how she just missed her having her around. That's what homeschooling is all about. In fact, that changes everything. So I decided I was going to write my own little official transcript in my house of what mattered. So I wrote on here, I did it in little bullet points and put their name, you know, school information. And then I wrote this. First point, spent 7,300 mornings together. We had 63 spontaneous, heartfelt talks. We had thousands of everyday conversations about nothing. I had over 176 heartfelt apologies. Had 2,000 not so heartfelt apologies. We prayed 18,000 meal prayers together. My child saw me at my worst. He saw me at those rare times when I laughed so hard I could barely breathe. We watched the snow fall in the middle of the day and wished it would never stop. We had lunch at McDonald's and splurged on McFlurries, the big ones. We baked cookies in the middle of the day. We worked side by side getting ready for company. We took flowers to an old person. We wrapped gifts and listened to Christmas music. Together we experienced the mundane and the sacred together and realized it was the same. We redeemed 16,380 hours because we chose to educate our children at home. That is why we homeschool. And God invented it. He just called it family. That's why we do what we do. Well, we are out of time. Just again, you can see more about me at thesmilinghomeschooler.com. If you're into podcasts, we have a weekly podcast. Sign up for a weekly email. I'm talking to all you out there too. I hope this is going to be a super encouraging week. But you cling to these 4 things. Because they are the bedrock. They are the things that we go back to over and over again. When the fog comes in and we can't see clearly, we cling to those things. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'll turn it over to whoever I turn this over to. Okay, we got somebody. Okay, let's pray. Father, we just thank you that you have decided, I guess, at the very beginning of time that you were going to use some parents to teach them, their kids, everything they needed to know, that you would transmit this over generations, just in this thing called family that we've sometimes called homeschooling. And I pray, Lord, for all the moms listening, that you would help them to remember that home's the best place for their kids, that they're the best teachers of their children, that every single one of their children is a masterpiece. And Father, would you just grant them the ability to smile? We thank you for this time that we have and the beginning of something great for the next couple days. We pray all this in your name, and all the moms here and all the moms online said, amen.
Amen.